You are now tuned into Super Soft Radio. My name is Tasha. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're on episode 2, guys. I'm a 2-hit wonder. Yes. Thank you so much again for tuning in. And thank you to everybody who followed, commented, engaged. I was expecting literally 3 people to see that video, and you guys have far surpassed my expectations. So I really appreciate that. I'm very thankful. This week, we are talking about the Australian Grand Prix. Child, oh, what a season opener that was. I absolutely have some thoughts. Let's get into it. I have my notes. I have my coffee. I think I'm ready. I feel like a hot take amongst Team LH specifically. I don't feel anything. I mean, I don't feel overly negative about it. I don't feel overly positive about it, although I was able to find positive aspects of Lewis's race. I think there was more negatives from the team itself, which I'll get into in a second. But yeah, as far as Lewis is concerned, especially after seeing practice and quali, how they went for not just Lewis, but the, both drivers and the team in general, I was just like, okay, my expectations for Sunday are quite a bit lower all of a sudden. And I think that's fine. I think one, as we say all the time, Lewis is just getting familiar with this car and coming to grips with it, becoming comfortable. He still has said it doesn't quite feel natural yet. And we all know that he's somebody who needs to sort of feel it. And knowing that kind of what he's talking about is along the lines of how this Ferrari engine is deploying its power. So that means like the car behaves a lot differently under acceleration and under braking and turning than the Mercedes, right? So he has to unlearn all like 18 years worth of muscle memory first before we get acclimated with the car. Fred, I believe, has also said something like, he expects him to come up to speed quickly, but it will take like a few races. So race number 1, given all that information and then seeing practice and seeing quali, I was like, okay, let me chill, because it doesn't really seem like much is going to be, it's not going to be a super straightforward race. And then also you have wet weather conditions for the following day, which he said, I'm not even familiar with the wet weather settings on the car. We haven't even gone over that part of the manual yet. So I just felt like going into Sunday, I think the best outcome was to finish the race. And certainly I understand people who were disappointed because of the opportunities that Ferrari had. We definitely were in podium contention at some point, maybe top 5 contention at some point, and then that all slipped away. But that was not due to Lewis or Charles, the driver's fault. That was fully a strategy error and fully a communication error. So based off of what Lewis could control, I say he did all right. I just did not have an overly negative reaction one way or the other. And, I know a lot of people are bringing up shit like other drivers' first times at Ferrari, they won their races within 1 race or 3 races. Like, if it takes 17 races for this man to get a win, I don't care. This is not about those other people. I'm sorry. And on the flip side, if I start pulling out Lewis's resume and start comparing what other drivers haven't done, I'll be the bad guy. So let's just leave it. Let him get acclimated. Let him get up to speed. Fred knows it's going to take a minute. Lewis knows it's going to take a minute. Most people in this situation know it's going to take a minute. It's everybody else who suddenly feel like he's supposed to just put on his cape and save Gotham City all of a sudden. Like, give him a second. Okay, let him get acclimated. Let him get used to the situation at hand. And then the second thing is Ferrari themselves have to get used to this new concept of a car that they developed over winter break. The car is 99% different than the predecessor. They switched from a push rod suspension to a pull rod suspension for the first time since, I think, 2015. And the reason that they changed the concept was because he said last year's car basically was at its development ceiling. So they basically had no choice but to revamp everything and fully bring out a new concept for this year. And that's obviously risky because there's going to be a certain point in the season where you're no longer going to want to develop this car. We're going to be looking toward 2026, and that goes for any team. So, this first race, it didn't seem like the setup, they really nailed it. It didn't look as alive and as agile as it did at times in Bahrain. So I think setup maybe caught them off guard. Albert Park is a much like smoother, more slippery track as it is. It already takes a minute to get the track gripped. Is that the right word? To get the track more grippy, rubbered in. So because it's not a purpose-built track and because it's not technically a street track, they have to, wait until they have all these different sessions before it starts to develop grip. So it already is kind of tricky to set the car up on those conditions. But then you're having to set the car up for dry conditions in practice and quali, but the race is wet. So in quali, it looked like we had a lot more downforce than the other cars, which was, contributing to us losing time in sector 3. That I think at some point Charles was losing like 7/10, something like that, something major. So he himself was also having a bad, I wouldn't say bad, but just like a very average, mediocre showing at quali. And I think for those reasons, I'm looking at Lewis like, okay, well, he's hanging in there. He's only 2/10 off of Charles after that last quali run that they both were able to do. So yeah, for those reasons, I just don't think that this race, you can just say like, oh, throw the season away or, it's over. You can't really say that because we truly don't know if this is just the situation of everything being new and, being caught off guard with the wet weather and the type of track that Australia is, as I mentioned, that, they just got the setup really wrong and that's it. Or if the car is really slow and really off the pace, we won't know for several races. So that's why I said, I'm trying to put everything a little bit more in perspective versus just being super reactive to it. And that's helped me feel a little bit zen coming out of Australia. Because as everybody says, this is just one of those races that's weird. It's not really representative for most teams' performance or, most drivers' performance. So you just have to kind of look at it as its own like little standalone thing and move on from there. And I also want to just say with like commentary, and fans are fans. We're gonna have our own conversations regardless. Agendas must fly. I know why people are hating on Lewis who aren't Lewis Hamilton fans, and I get it. But watching the fucking TV, watching commentary all weekend has been so annoying because here I thought for one little millisecond that we would get some semblance of peace. Can we just watch and observe and absorb Lewis being in the Ferrari for the first time, his first practice? No. Lewis is 4/10 off of Charles after practice 3. Bitch, it's practice. Does practice count or not? Like nobody in the sport can make up their mind. Does practice count or not? Does quali count or not? Every other time, points are scored on Sunday. But when it's Lewis, oh my God, it's fully indicative of the apocalypse upon us. Like it's so frustrating as a fan or just in general, just trying to observe and watch. Why are we being so overly critical? We know the man doesn't know his way around this car. Okay. I know that as a fan. And I know. They have agendas. They have storylines that they have to kind of like push, but it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. Some stuff just doesn't have to be, we don't have to beat this dead horse every single race. My God, let shit breathe. Let it marinate. We know he's not going to be on top of things off the jump. It's not realistic. It's not feasible. And so I just feel like even me as a fan who's delulu as fuck, you guys know this about me or you will know this about me. I still can pull back a little bit, and I can be like, okay, let me tune it down because I know that it's not going to be perfect. And especially after seeing practice, especially seeing quali, we saw it was not a perfect run, but that was across the board at Ferrari. Charles wasn't much better. The gap wasn't that extreme. Lewis chipped down at that gap and ended up, like I said, 2/10 behind Charles. And this is a guy who doesn't know his way around the car and is still adapting to it. So imagine when he's comfortable, what that will kind of start to look like. A little bit spooky. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm not freaking out. I'm not worried. I'm not like, it's the season opener at a weird track and it's weird weather and we got through it. So for me, I'll put that in the win column for right now. And then as we move on to other tracks and see what else, what other conditions are thrown at us, what other types of, setups are thrown at us, then I think we can start to make a little bit more of a picture of what's happening, and then we can panic or sit back, whatever. But yeah, I think right now, people who left this race like, the season's over, give everything to McLaren, da 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 da. Chill out, relax. And I say all that to say, even though I feel like performance-wise, there's not much to take yet from the Ferrari, I think the biggest worry that they're going to have is communication and strategy. But this is not a new thing. So all the people who were like, Team LH, now you know what we're dealing with. Welcome to Ferrari, Team LH. Baby, we knew. We see these races. Okay, we see y'all crying every week. I already knew what we were in for when it came to strategy, when it came to communication. It was last year that I was like, oh, it's actually starting to get better for some races. Like certain stuff operationally was starting to get better, but then it's like, oh, we're reverting back. Oh, that wasn't good. Silverstone actually comes to mind. It's a big, huge blunder for the team. And so, yeah, I'm just like, I knew that wasn't going to change over winter break. I even said that in my last video. I was like, for as much as I believe in Lewis, Ferrari, I know how they get down. So it's like, yeah, you kind of have to take the average in between those two, the Delulu and the realism, and you just kind of have to like, hunker down a little bit. This season's going to be really long. We have a lot of races, but for me, if they don't work out the strategy stuff, if they don't work out the communication stuff, there isn't going to be an A championship. You know what I'm saying? There's not going to be any of that because they're not making the right calls. They're not making those split decisions at the right time. And especially in this race where it's Lewis's first race in the car ever, and it's his first ever wet race, he can't do multiple people's jobs. Like this can't be a Lewis and inshallah type of situation. He has to focus on just finishing the race. And I do believe he says that in the post-race conference where he's like, at some point the car wanted to go on the wall and I just basically had to stop that from happening. So that's what he was focused on. He can't do Ricky's job. He can't do the race strategy job and try to call things. And obviously he can't, see the radar from his cockpit and getting wrong or, bad information about the type of rain that they were expecting was a huge misstep. Then on the other side of the garage, Charles gets the correct information about the rain, but they don't really do anything about it when the rain starts. Like they don't have inters prepped or anything. Like there's just no, there's just, why would you do that? I don't get that. I don't understand why you would be like, yeah, we're expecting class 3 rain and then it rains and you're not implored to bring your driver in for inters, the correct tire. And then it's like, of course, if nothing else, it does seem like the Ferrari tends to have like this trend in wet weather races where they're not fully prepared or they don't always make the right decision. So then my question becomes, okay, so why don't you pick a team like, I don't know, Red Bull and do whatever they're doing? Max comes in, you come in. That's not hard, surely. And we didn't do that either. Max goes in for inters. We stayed out on hards. And for 4 seconds, Lewis was leading the race. And I was like, oh, this is going to be so amazing if we weren't going to get eaten up by people who were put on the correct tire at the correct time. So yeah, we either need to really like whip the strategy department in shape or we need to start poaching people, passing out blank checks like candy. I don't know what we need to do, but yeah, if anybody's going to win anything, championships, even just races, we can't have people on the pit wall and the communication between the pit and the drivers be so like, disjointed and disruptive. Lewis and Ricky definitely have a lot of work to do in the upcoming races. Ricky was just yapping Lewis's ear off, and I've never heard Lewis be so annoyed over the radio before. He was told, I don't even know, like 4 or 5 times to hit the K1 button. And Lewis was like, dude, just leave me to it. Leave me to it. And, he increasingly is getting more and more annoyed because Ricky keeps asking him to push his damn button. And I think Lewis was like, brother, please. Like, first of all, I'm not even in DRS range. There's that. But I also feel like maybe deep down, he did not trust that if he hit that button, that his car would still be on the track. Like, I think he just was like, let me just chill, because there's just, if I do anything stupid, anything that makes this car behave differently to what I've been used to over this past, like, couple of laps, I'm going to end up in the wall or in the grass like everybody else has. So yeah, I think he was just not really trusting the circumstances to actually follow Ricky's instruction. But yeah, Ricky was doing too much. Ricky, we do not need the recipe to grandma's peach cobbler, okay? Like, just give us the basic data that we need and then leave it alone from there. And then, of course, you have Charles and Brian, which Brian's new. And this is maybe where I'm like, okay, this is where like the alarm bells are a little bit for me. Because Brian's new. He got there last season. So they had time to work together. No, it's not like years long, whatever, but they've had some time together and they're still working it out. They're still ironing things out. Brian, bless him. That radio that Charles was like, why is there water leaking in my car? And Brian's like, must be water. Babe, if you don't pass the microphone to somebody who actually is going to give me some information that I can use. He's like, why is my car leaking? Why am I wet? I know it's water. Thank God it was water, and not something else. But yeah, like, it's just stuff like that. Like, this is the most like Ferrari coded radio messages, and it's race one. So that is where I'm like, I feel like if there's alarm bells, I feel like that's the end of the spectrum where they lie. And I do hope with Lewis being there with so much experience and so much willingness to be very assertive, especially when it comes to building a team and a new team at that, that if we got to change personnel, then, we got to do that, because we can't have scenarios where the drivers are doing their thing and they're doing a decent job, and then the strategy calls undo all of that hard work. What's the point? What's the point of getting somebody like Lewis Hamilton on the team? What's the point of attracting all of these different new engineers to the team? And then the part that we blunder is the strategy. Having a driver pairing like Charles and Lewis and then not giving them the full gamut of tools to work with when they're at these races is asinine. So yeah, there's no point of revamping Ferrari, of looking toward the future, if like in the present we can't get like the basic shit down, which is like making sure both drivers have the same information about the weather coming, and that we immediately act on the correct information and do the right strategy. So yeah, that's where I will say my main, if I'm worried about anything after this race, that would be it, because the driver stuff will develop throughout the season and we can always critique that later. But yeah, it just felt like the setup was not right. The communication was annoying, and hopefully that changes. And then certainly the strategy for Ferrari needs a huge revamp, because it's not just this season. And we all know that. We've all seen how bad and boneheaded these calls are. So yeah, there's no point in marketing this team and no point of marketing this season as cinema if we're going to do stupid shit and just undo all of that. And that's all I'll say about Ferrari. So again, while you are not really supposed to leave Albert Park with the feeling of a concrete opinion over a team's performance or their pace, I still feel like the one safe bet is that McLaren is the team to beat. That car looked really good. Even with the wet condition, it still looked really stable. And just overall, I think they just sort of picked up right where they left off from last season. I don't know if they made as many changes to their car, like as if Ferrari did, for example. So I can't really speak from that place of knowing that. But if they continued, just made some tweaks to last season, then that makes me wonder what their kind of development window is, what they have left for this concept. So I'll be really curious in that regard to see if other teams have time to catch up before they decide, just to look to 2026. That would be the biggest sort of area for me, if it's going to be a season like 2023 where it's basically just McLaren versus McLaren, or if we're still in a scenario where the teams are converging. So yeah, that's gonna be really interesting to see. And I, like I said, don't know much about their concept if it changed that much. But yeah, they look like the ones to beat. I definitely am not looking forward to team orders, and I did not appreciate team orders 30 laps into the new season. I did not wait 98 days to watch this. I want some racing, okay? I want to see some racing. And so that really annoyed the shit out of me. I'm not even going to lie. I'm like, here we fucking go again. And listen, and before anybody says anything about team orders and the strategy behind them, I get it and I understand them. I fully am aware of why they're needed and necessary. I do. But race 1, 30 laps, I'm not with it. Oscar's home race. Come on now. Come on now. Let the man race. Oh, but Oscar's mistake prone. Oh, Oscar chooses tires. Then let that be what it is. Like the same way that we've seen Lando be a race leader and mess up or have the wrong strategy call and or something heartbreaking happens for him. It's all part of how they learn and develop and grow, and I feel like Oscar deserves to have that opportunity, especially you just signed him for several more years. Like he's not there to be the number 2 driver, right? Like that's their whole shtick anyway. We don't have a number 2 driver. Side note, I just feel like that's such bullshit when teams say that because we've all seen every single team prioritize one driver or the other, right? Like I don't respect Red Bull, but I feel like I at least respect that they're just very clearly have a number 1 and a number 2 driver and they just move on from that standpoint versus trying to pretend that everybody's treated equally and everybody has equal opportunity. Like, no, we don't. It's not true. Just because you say it doesn't make it true. So yeah, that being said, let Oscar race. If he is leading a race and he fucks up, then he fucks up. And that's just going to have to be what it is. And I think that's how I feel as a fan, just wanting to be entertained by racing. I know they have a whole other goal in these races, but I hate having to say so many caveats because my opinion is just, I want to see them race. That's what I want to say. I want to see racing. So if Oscar is the faster racer on that day, let him through. No hold position. This is stupid. And I know they didn't want him racing through back markers and whatever, but as I said, let the chips fall where they fall. If Oscar does something stupid and it costs him his race, as we saw later on in the race, then yeah, that's on him. He understands. He hates when it happens and all that stuff. So it's on him to improve and to make less mistakes. But I just overall want to see. I want to see them race. And if it's going to be down to Oscar versus Lando, then I don't want the team to interfere that much because I don't want it to feel like Lando's being basically handed the championship on a platter at the expense of Oscar. Let the girls fight. Red Bull, Mercedes, I don't really know. I mean, listen, with Mercedes, for example, I need to see their car for sure at other tracks and specifically more hot temperature tracks because that was kind of their weakness in the previous generations of the car. You can definitely tell, even though this, again, wasn't representative of full pace, full performance, you could definitely tell that they're still sort of in that no man's land where their car is not really fast enough to keep up with the front runner, but it's not slow enough to be midfield. So they're definitely still in that top 4 pack, but I don't know how much of a jump that they made because I just knew I want to see it in different conditions because from track to track, weather condition to weather condition, the car was just completely different, session to session, completely different. So yeah, I'd be really curious to see if they worked any of that stuff out of the car in this current iteration. I am praying for the downfall, like I said, but just as an observer, my thought is that they must have. I can't imagine Kimi having to drive the same beast that Lewis had to drive in the previous season. That would be crazy, right? To have an 18-year-old who already is new to F1 driving in a car similar to the W15. So my instinct, my hunch is that they made that car as stable as possible in the time that they had. And maybe it might still be quirky depending on certain conditions, but I don't think it's going to be quite as bad. And maybe that comes at the sacrifice of speed or overall competitiveness. but it also maybe means that Kimi's not going to get yeeted off of the damn racetrack in the middle of a turn. So that's kind of where my head is at. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like to me, wouldn't make sense. But I also don't know what was possible to accomplish over winter break, especially knowing that they have wind tunnel issues and correlation issues. So yeah, I just need to see that car at a few more tracks before, I know for a fact that it's either much better, much nicer to drive, or if it's just being masked by the cooler temperatures. Red Bull, I mean, it definitely looks like they kind of are struggling a little bit, which is surprising to see. The beginning of the era of regulations to now. But that's kind of the whole game with ground effect, is that once you hit that development ceiling, you have to move on to something else, another concept. And also losing Adrian Newey means that, he's not around to give him that game, like he's the ground effect era, maestro. And now he's at Aston, and they have to rely on their other engineers and their other designers to design something comparable, really, in order for Max to stay ahead. And it doesn't look like they did that, at least not yet. As I said, we don't know. We won't know for a while. But right now, it definitely looked like it was struggling a lot more than it has in the past. Max was able to put a little pressure on Lando toward the end of the race, which, was interesting to see. And let me go back to McLaren for a second. I will say, I do need to give Lando his props. I feel like it was good to see him lead a race. He looked very confident throughout the entire race. He did have a few mishaps, as well as Oscar. So neither McLaren driver had like a super clean race. But seeing Lando like get pole and lead the race and win the race, I was like, okay, maybe we've turned the page on skittish, easy to bully Lando. So that's my like mental note for this season. Like, can he actually like step up and win? And if that's the case, that's why the team order pisses me off, because I'm like, let Lando win. If Lando's going to win, he's going to win, not because you guys are holding back Oscar. So seeing Max put pressure on Lando at the end of the race and Lando still being able to keep a cool composure was definitely a good sign for races to come, that maybe we'll see Lando kind of turn the page on that, and that maybe we'll see Max be in a worse position in terms of car competitiveness, but maybe he feels like mentally he can still get in Lando's head. And yeah, like I said, I guess we're just going to have to see if it works out, which way it spins, because I think if Lando stays confident and McLaren is the front runner, then it's pretty much his championship to lose. And then alternatively, if Max can put that pressure and that pressure eventually gets Lando to crack, then he'll maybe win his fifth. And either way, as I said, as just an observer, as a fan of the sport, I just want something interesting to happen. So I do need the boys to step it up a little bit about how they handle pressure and how they get through a full season of a real fight from the beginning. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. So the only other things I have from this race, one, justice for Yuki. Justice for fucking Yuki, bro. He was so incredible this weekend. The results don't show it, very sadly. I'm so mad that he did not leave Australia with the points that he basically deserved from the running this race 90% of the way. Oh my God, he was in the points the whole time. And then just like Ferrari, Racing Bulls botched the strategy when we needed inters, and he just lost all those positions when he came in later for the inter tires. So yeah, I'm a little bit mad for Yuki, because outside of Max, he's been the better Red Bull driver, basically. So yeah, give that man his flowers, give that man his seat. Do I expect if Yuki goes to Red Bull, for example, that he drives better than Perez or any other, Liam or no, because that car is 1000% tailor-made for Max. We know this, but it is the fucking principle for me. Okay. That was his promotion. That was his promotion. Promote him first. If he doesn't work out, then you let him go, and then you promote the next best guy. But you don't let people skip ahead. And I don't want to hear this, oh, he did better in testing, da-da-da-da. Where is it at? Liam had an awful weekend. He has not looked comfortable in that car one time. We saw him in testing. We saw him barely have practices because their car was still not put together. I mean, yeah, he hasn't really had a great start to his tenure at Red Bull, however long tenure. I love that word tenure. I don't think everybody has tenure. I don't think a few races is tenure. So let me find a different word for next time. But his career at Red Bull in the main team, I feel like it just hasn't been impressive. And I know people say he's an impressive driver and da-da-da-da. Like, I'm not seeing it. And I am bitter. I am bitter because Yuki deserved that. You cannot tell me that somebody who has had so many different teammates come in and out of all of them, he's the main one that survived and has done really well against them. And he's the one that gets overlooked for promotion. I don't want to fucking hear it. And it's just the principle. I don't expect anybody to go in that seat and do well. That's just the T. And it's been that way for multiple seasons now. No one else is going to come in that car unless they can drive a car the way that Max drives the car. And so far, nobody else can. But give my man his promotion. He earned it. Okay? Period. And give him some better strategists because he should have scored those points. Those were his points. Justice for Yuki. Oh my God, don't piss me off. What else happened? Oh my God, heartbroken for Haas. Speaking of strategy, dude, they were on the right tire. They were on the right tire before the safety car. And then they swapped to the wrong tire. And I don't understand. This is what I'm talking about. Why is nobody ready? Why would you have done that? What made anybody think, first of all, that inters was not the way to go? Like, even though it was a short amount of rain, it was huge raindrops and enough parts of the track were slippery to where it would not have made a difference if you could like kind of limp around. There was no limping around. The whole track was wet and greasy and slippery. So why would you fucking switch from inters? I don't get it. That I'm just like, come on now. And then Haas, the results speak for themselves. What else? Oh, in the Carlos versus Alex battle, Alex Albon has struck the first blow. Carlos, of course, did not finish the race. Alex was able to maintain a points finish. He stayed ahead of the Ferraris, which was insane. Just, we know the Williams versus the Ferrari, like it doesn't even sound right, but it was a great track for them. They did a good job. Obviously, we know that the McLaren, we know that the Williams has been really good on straight line speed for a few seasons now, but it also looked really agile in the cornering. And I thought that was a nice update change. So I guess I'll have to read more into what their updates were for their car for the season. But I don't know, it looked pretty good. Maybe the floor is not bald headed anymore. Maybe they, have a little bit more, I don't know, some razzle dazzle somewhere, because it really did look like a much better car. It wasn't very easy at all to overtake. I mean, Lewis was unable to do it throughout the race. I'm not sure. I keep going back to the fact that I'm not really sure he was trying to at any point either, but I don't know. It just, I think he was just chilling for most of the race. But either way, give Alex his credit. He definitely did a great job in quali as well as the race. And yeah, getting those points for Williams was definitely needed, especially after Carlos was crashed out in lap 1. By the way, Carlos Sainz fucked my fantasy league. I put my 3X chip on him. Don't ask me why. I was being lazy, actually. Let me just, I knew there was a lot I needed to change and adjust before the race, but I was just like, I don't care. And it turns out I do actually care, because I lost 57 points. That man has me in like 14th place in my league. Like, oh my God. Like, what? Carlos, I just knew you were going to finish the race. I knew that, like, at the very least, the man was going to finish the race. Yeah. So this is what I get for being cheap. This is what I get for balling on a budget. The fantasy league pricing is out of fucking control, by the way. I don't know who set these prices, but count your days. Count your days. My team does not make sense. Let me pull it up, actually. Hold on. Because I actually have two teams. So I have actually a team that I just set up, like a secondary one. And then I have a second one. Okay. Here we go. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, okay. Let me talk to you about my fantasy league right now. Guys, I am negative 16 points. I've got $0.3 million left in my budget. Carlos Sainz cost me 57 points. As I said, I put the 3X chip on him. Okay. Because I knew he was going to finish the race. I just knew. I was like, oh, yeah, this looks pretty strong. Yeah, no. 57 fucking points down the drain. I'm going to jump off the nearest cliff. Alpine cost me 14 points. Jack, listen, I was riding for you because people have been doubting you. But I was like, I'm going to give the man a chance. I'm going to give Peace a chance. No, you cost me 14 points. So whatever. Ferrari got me 36 points. Hammy got me 8 points because I had the 2X chip on him. I thought he was going to stay in like P5. You know what I mean? So I was like, oh, he'll score more points, but I'll just double it. And Carlos will score less points, so it'll be tripled. Does that make sense? Let me know if that's a good strategy. I feel like maybe that's wrong. So that was my logic. I was like, well, if he scores less points, they'll triple it. Right? Oh boy. Anyway, let me figure out my strategy next time. Anyway, so yeah, but yeah, shout out to Williams. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye. I always say this. I say this all the time. I feel like a broken record. I am keeping tabs on Williams. They are like my team that I'm just like, I always want to check in on them because I like James Vowles. I love the vision he has for Williams. And I'm just curious to see how much he can turn that team around in, as short a period as possible. And yeah, so far each season, it seems to be getting better. Last season, definitely they were off, but it felt like a rebuild because they were restructuring stuff like operationally. They were moving from Excel spreadsheets where they, keep track of all the parts for the car. They were porting that information over into an actual database system. So it was stuff like that. And they ran out of floors at some point because they just didn't have the parts to make. So yeah, last season was really rough, and I'll be really surprised / maybe happy for them if they're able to actually turn it around this year. But Carlos crashing in the first lap is probably not good for the budget. That second Williams seat, man, they love to cause some damage. What else? Oh, shout out to Antonelli being one of 2 rookies to actually finish the race. That was a tough race. We lost damn near everybody. How many people ended the race? It was 14. 14 people out of 20 ended that race. So you already know that was a difficult race to get through. There was a couple of moments where I think Antonelli almost ate it, and that would have been bad because, yeah, it looked a little crazy, some of his moments. But overall, he got through it. He finished. He had some really great overtakes. He benefited from the pit stop craziness toward the end, but still, he did a good job. So I am really excited to see that. As I said, I'm rooting for Mercedes' downfall, but I have a heart, okay? I have a heart. And I do want to see Kimi do really well because there's a lot. There's too much. And I don't want to be the person that adds to that. I just am saying, in general, if Mercedes could falter, but we leave Kimi alone, then that would be good. Yeah. It was also good seeing that Kimi, it was actually lapping faster toward the end than George Russell. So we'll earmark that for later in the season because that'll be interesting. Let me not go on that rant right now, actually. Let me say that for later in the season. Outside of that, and I definitely want to give a shout out to Anthony Hamilton for comforting Isack Hadjar, who was very upset after he crashed his car on the formation lap. And yeah, just seeing an adult comfort somebody so young, but especially like Anthony Hamilton, they are always such good sportsmen. You know what I mean? Like they always shake their competitors' hands. They're always shouting people out, giving them praise. And Anthony, I think at the beginning of the weekend, essentially was like, I want everybody to finish the race because he already knew it was going to be tricky. We have 6 rookies on the grid. It's rainy. There's so many other team, experienced drivers, but they've swapped teams. So it was just like a lot going on. Like everybody was going to be a little bit uncomfortable in this race, except for McLaren. I think they're the only team that has the same driver pairing. Oh, and Aston. And so, yeah, it was just that he was like, I want everybody to finish. And so seeing Isack basically crying, and whoever decided that they were just going to like zoom in on this boy crying, again, count your days. Like, come on now. Come on now. I know nothing else was really happening going on, but still, like, let the man be sad in peace. So yeah, to see him come and comfort him and give him a hug, and especially knowing that Isack really loves Lewis as like one of his people that he looks up to, and so then to have his dad come and give you a hug just had to feel really nice. And yeah, that was just like such a sweet gesture, and I'm glad that somebody had a heart, because then we had to hear from stupid ass Helmut Marko about how it was embarrassing to see Isack cry, as if having emotions as a human being is embarrassing. I just think that's such an archaic way of thinking and way of being. And you don't need to treat people like that. I don't care. It's one thing to talk shit. It really is. It really is one thing to talk shit as like a fan. But this is somebody that you are employing. You don't need to be abusive toward them in the media, especially. If you want to talk to him or talk to them like this in private, that's one thing, because we would never know about it. But to make it known and to call that embarrassing when he's basically crying because he's disappointed that he didn't get to complete his first ever race in Formula One, that's trash. And we know that Helmut is a trash human being. And I know he has one fucking foot in the pit of hell. And I'm just waiting, counting down to the days when we are free of this man. Like, you have more pressing things to worry about. Is your will written? Okay, like stay in your lane. I'm tired. I'm tired of Helmut. Like, don't be a dick. Every season, especially when it's the drivers of color, I'm so tired of the like micro and macro aggressions against them by Helmut. He's not that special. He's not even that good of a scout anymore. One, for him to still be employed by this team in this capacity. Consulting on what? What are you consulting on? Exactly. Because every person that he's brought up or that he backs hasn't really been stellar, hasn't really been like this diamond in the rough. So yeah, you're lucky you're still employed. But yeah, I just feel like that was a nice, bright moment in the weekend that was already really stressful for these guys. And I hope we get more moments of good sportsmanship throughout and less moments of Helmut Marko running his old ass mouth on these kids, because I'll fight a geriatric man. Like, like don't tempt me with a good time. I will fight an old man. Please, please. You have mouth. You need to be able to back it up anyway. Like, so yeah, somebody needs to run the fade. And if I have to, tag me in. I'll do it. So that's it for me for Australia. I think, as I said, I just don't feel so reactive to it. It just was a weird race for everybody. Everybody messed up. Everybody went off. Everybody had weird little quirky setup issues. Cars didn't look the best. So we'll just call it a scrimmage and say that the season starts in China. Next week should be interesting. Or excuse me, this week. We're already in race week. It's on Sunday. But it should be interesting because it's a sprint race weekend. And I mean, those kind of get to me a little bit because we really don't have that much practice before we have to set the car up for sprint quali and the sprint race. They changed the rules, so they do have at least 2 parc fermés. So I guess any data that we kind of learn in the sprint, we can apply to the Grand Prix car, but you don't get a chance to run that before the race starts. So you basically have to hope that that change in setup pays off, or you can obviously keep the same one from the race. So yeah, it still is kind of like a curveball, and God forbid it rains. I don't know if it's on the radar, but China can have wet races. I know it's a bit more humid as well. So yeah, weather might be interesting. The sprint setup stuff might be an interesting little curveball as well, as I said. So yeah, I guess we'll just kind of have to see. We might still be in the same position this time next week, where it's like, oh well, I didn't really learn anything. But I do hope we get to see a little bit more performance and pace from some of the teams, because I definitely was like, this can't be all there is, girl. This can't be it. It's going to be a very long, boring season if only McLaren got this right. So let us pray. Let us hope for the best. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. As I said, it'll be for China. We'll do a little debrief. And yeah, fingers crossed. More interesting race, better race for Lewis, and better race for Ferrari in general. Yeah. I'm Tasha, as I said earlier. Thank you so much for listening. Signing off. Have a good night. And yeah, it's just, to me, I just feel like it's just one of those things where. Did I lose my train of thought? Where the fuck was I?
We're talking about rubbered in.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. So yeah, that's it for me for Australia. I think just in general, it was a weird race. Why can't I speak? Isack DNF, Jack DNF, Carlos Sainz Jr. DNF, Fernando Alonso DNF, Gabriel Bortoleto DNF, Liam Lawson DNF. And if you enjoyed this video, thank you. Oh, she's glitching. My brain is glitching. Oh no. Okay, hold on. Hold on. Take Isaac's pain, triple it, and give it to fucking Helmut Marko. Please. I need that old man to suffer. Tired of him. Okay, babe. We'll just get to it. Leave me to it. We are checking. Ricky Tan.
Push the damn button.
I thought I was a big yapper. Ricky said, have you ever thought about the meaning of life? He said, Lewis, don't forget to drink water. He doesn't even drink water. That's the other thing. It's like, do you even know him at all? Do you even know Lewis at all? He doesn't drink water. He doesn't drink that warm ass water. He said, press and hold the K1 button. Lewis said, leave me to it. Stop talking. Damn. They worried about how to say hammer time in Italian. You need to worry about how to say shut up. He said, it must be the water. Okay. Girl said, girl, if you don't. He said, does anybody work there? Cheryl said, does anybody who knows anything work here? I want to talk to the manager. Bless him. Anyway. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that video, please be sure to give it a like. Maybe let me know in the comments some of your highlights or lowlights from the Australian Grand Prix. And be sure to subscribe if you have not already. You can also check out my previous episode in segments or the full version in my adjoining playlists. And yeah, that's it from me. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you again for supporting, and I'll see you real soon.